a labyrinth of cold marble and gold, a place where a single wrong step meant exile or the grave. But within the palace, a secret was breathing, a young woman standing between the throne of a king and the survival of her bloodline. The lot is cast. The countdown to the 13th of Adar has begun. One girl, one crown, one chance to save a nation. This is a story of shadows, Providence, and a courage that changed the world. If you value history told through a cinematic lens, subscribe and join our journey. Like this video to help us share Esther's light with the world, and tell us in the comments, do you believe in coincidences or is it destiny? Now, let us go back to the beginning. Her name was Hadassah. It meant myrtle, a plant that thrives in the hardest soil. And her soil was hard indeed. An orphan in a foreign land, a girl who learned early that survival meant staying invisible. Mordecai was her shield. He taught her the stories of her fathers in whispers. He taught her to be proud of her blood, but to keep it hidden in her heart. In Susa, a secret was the only thing that kept you alive. Then came the defiance. Queen Vashti refused to be a trophy for a drunken king. In a single moment of pride, she chose her dignity over her crown. It was a brave act, and it left a throne empty. The king's rage was absolute. Vashti was cast into the shadows, her name erased from the palace records. A decree went out. The king would search the empire for a new queen. Disobedience would not be tolerated again. The announcement reached every corner of the world. It sounded like a dream, but Mordecai knew it was a trap. Once you entered those gates, your old life was over. The girl who walked in would never come home. They arrived in waves, daughters of nobles and farmers alike. And among them, trying to disappear into the crowd, was Hadassah. She gave them her Persian name, Esther, the star, a light hidden in plain sight. Haggai, the keeper of the women, saw something in her, not just beauty, but a quiet spirit. Mordecai watched from the gates as his daughter was led away into the golden prison. He could only watch and pray. 12 months of preparation, 6 months in oil of myrrh, 6 months in perfumes. They were being polished like jewels for a king's inspection. But Esther knew the truth. This was not pampering. This was a golden cage. By day, she wore the Persian smile, but by night, she touched the hidden mark of her heritage. She whispered the prayers Mordecai taught her in the dark. In this palace, one overheard word was a death sentence. The 10th month arrived. Esther walked into the vast silence of the throne room. Xerxes, a man of iron and fire, waited to judge her. She was terrified, but she hid her fear behind a veil of grace. The king did not see a commoner. He saw a light. He loved her more than all the others, a favor that moved the foundations of the court. Out of 1,000 women, he chose the orphan. He chose the secret. The golden crown was placed upon her head. Trumpets echoed through Susa. Hadassah was gone. Queen Esther had risen. But as the silk touched her skin, she felt the crushing weight of the life she was now forced to lead. The celebration faded into silence. Sitting alone, the palace felt colder than the streets. She had everything, yet she had nothing she could truly call her own. A queen's life is a game of survival, and the stakes were about to rise. Every day, Mordecai sat at the gates. He could not enter. He could not reach her. He was the only one who knew the girl beneath the gold. He watched the palace walls, and he prayed for the shadow he saw moving within. For a time, there was peace. But in the corridors of power, a new darkness was taking root. A man of ancient hate was climbing to the king's right hand. Haman was coming, and the world was about to burn. His name was Haman, a man of cold ambition and a hunger for worship that could never be filled. He climbed the ranks of Susa, not with merit, but with malice, and now he stood at the peak. The king gave Haman his signet. He gave him his trust, and then he gave a command. Every knee shall bow, every head shall hit the dust when Haman passes. Power had finally found its predator. A sea of people knelt. 1,000 heads bowed in fear. But in the center of the crowd, one man stood tall. One man remained unbroken while the empire collapsed around him. Mordecai the Jew. He did not stand out of spite. He stood out of a higher law. You shall have no other gods before me. To bow to Haman was to betray his soul, and he would not bend. Haman's pride was a fragile thing. When he saw Mordecai standing, his heart turned to stone. He didn't just want the man dead. He wanted the lineage erased. Total annihilation. In the dark of his chambers, the lot was cast. Pur, a roll of the dice to decide the date of a massacre. 11 months, a countdown to the end of a people. He planned it with cold, lethal precision. He whispered poison into the king's ear. There is a people among us who do not obey. He didn't name them. He only offered 10,000 talents of silver to see them gone. The king bought the lie. The king did not ask for names. He only gave his ring. The seal was pressed into blood-red wax. The law was written. It was irreversible. According to Persian law, once sealed, it could never be undone. The couriers went out at the king's command. Faster than the wind, they carried the death sentence to 127 provinces. From India to Ethiopia, the word spread like a plague. The countdown to the 13th of Adar had begun. Shock turned to silence. In the streets of Susa, the Jewish people read the words and felt the breath of death. Parents looked at their children and wondered if they would see another spring. The sun was still shining, but the world had gone cold. Mordecai did not hide. He tore his royal robes and put on the rough fabric of mourning, sackcloth and ashes. He walked through the city with a cry so bitter it pierced the palace walls. His grief was a warning and a prayer. Word reached the queen. Your cousin is at the gate in ashes. Esther was shaken. She sent him fresh clothes, begging him to cover his grief. But Mordecai refused. Comfort is a lie when a shadow is at the door. She sent Hatak, her most trusted servant, to bridge the gap between her gold and his ashes. At the gate, the truth was passed from hand to hand. The decree, the 10,000 talents, the name of the enemy, Haman. Esther held the scroll. She read the words of her own execution. For years, she had hidden her blood to stay safe, only to find that her blood had already been marked for the grave. There was no longer a place to hide. The weight of millions crashed down upon her. Every family in the empire, every child in the provinces, their lives were now tied to her silence. She was the Queen of Persia, but she felt like a ghost. Mordecai's message was a command. Go to the king. Plead for your people. But Esther knew the law. To approach the throne uninvited was to ask for a blade to the throat. Even a queen can be a corpse in a moment. Then came the words that would echo through history. Do not think you will escape in the palace. If you stay silent, help will come from elsewhere, but you will perish. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. The fear was still there, but the purpose was stronger. Esther sat in the silence of her room and felt to shift. She was no longer just an orphan. She was no longer just a queen. She was a bridge. Go, she told them. Fast for me. 3 days, no bread, no water. My maids and I will do the same. She was stripping away the palace luxury to find the strength of her fathers, preparing her soul for the end. The 3rd day arrived. She stood tall, the crown heavy on her brow. I will go to the king, she whispered, and if I perish, I perish. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important. The 3rd day. Esther, dressed in her royal robes, not for vanity, but for battle. She walked across the courtyard toward the inner throne. Every step was a gamble with death. Silence fell over the guards. The king turned his head. A second of eternity passed. Then the gold moved. Xerxes extended the scepter. Life, not death. He was charmed by her presence, unaware that the woman before him was the very target of his own decree. What is your petition, Queen Esther? He asked. She didn't reveal the plot, not yet. She invited him and Haman to a private banquet. To defeat a snake, you must first bring him out into the light. Wine flowed. Laughter filled the room. Haman sat at the king's table, his ego swelling like a poison. He felt untouchable. Esther watched him over the rim of her cup, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Xerxes asked again, "What is your wish?" But Esther hesitated. She felt the timing wasn't right. "Come to a second banquet tomorrow," she said. One more night of life for her people. One more night of pride for Haman. Haman left the palace walking on air. He was the only man invited to eat with the king and queen. He gathered his friends and his wife, boasting of his wealth and his favor. He was at the peak of his power. But then he saw Mordecai at the gate. The joy vanished. His wife, Zeresh, suggested a solution. Build a gallows 75 feet high. Hang him in the morning before the feast. Haman loved the idea. The wood began to groan. That night, sleep fled from the king. Providence moved in the dark. He ordered the chronicles of his reign to be read aloud. He didn't want music. He wanted the dry records of history. And there he found a forgotten name. He read of the 2 guards who tried to assassinate him and the man who saved his life. Mordecai. What honor has been done for this man? The king asked. The answer was a whisper. Nothing. The sun rose on a day of execution. Haman arrived early, the smell of fresh timber from the gallows still on his clothes. He came to ask for a head, but the king had a different question waiting. Haman, the king called out, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman smiled. In his pride, he thought, who would the king honor more than me? The hook was set. He spoke of royal robes, a royal horse, a crown placed upon the man's head. Let a noble lead him through the city, Haman said, proclaiming his greatness to all. He was describing his own fantasy. Then came the thunder. Hurry, said Xerxes, take the robes and the horse, and do exactly as you have said for Mordecai the Jew. The world stood still. The executioner was now the servant. Haman dressed his enemy in the king's own silk. He led the horse through the streets of Susa, shouting the honors he had intended for himself. Every word was a drop of poison in his own throat. The parade ended. Mordecai returned to his post, unchanged by the gold. But Haman fled to his house, his head covered in shame. His wise men saw the truth. If this Mordecai is of Jewish seed, you have begun to fall. There was no time to mourn his pride. The king's eunuchs arrived to hurry Haman to the queen's second banquet. The trap was laid, the wine was poured, and Esther was ready to speak. The king asked a third time, "What is your petition?" Esther stood. "If I have found favor, spare my life, for we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed." The king's face went white with fury. "Who is he?" Xerxes roared. "Where is the man who dared to do this?" Esther pointed a steady finger. "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." The predator finally became the prey. The predator was unmasked. Haman fell at the queen's feet, begging for a life he had never shown mercy to others. But the king's wrath was a fire that could not be quenched. The shadow that had loomed over Susa was finally breaking. The law of the Medes and Persians could not be repealed, but it could be countered. A second decree went out, written by Mordecai and sealed with the king's ring. The Jewish people were given the right to stand and defend their lives. The 13th of Adar arrived. Instead of a massacre, there was a triumph. The light of courage scattered the darkness of hate. Across 127 provinces, a nation that was marked for death rose to claim its future. Mordecai was brought into the palace, second only to the king. The sackcloth was gone, replaced by royal blue and white. He became a father to his people, seeking the wealth of his nation and speaking peace to all his seed. And so the Feast of Purim was born. A day of lots turned to a day of laughter. To this day, the story is told of the orphan girl who became a queen and the secret that saved a world. For God moves in the silence. Esther's name means the star. And like a star, she reminds us that even in the darkest night, one light can guide a nation. For such a time as this, she was born. And for such a time as this, you are here. This is the divine secret.